Welcome to the special edition of Hannity, Terror in America. Tonight, Americans view terrorism as the biggest threat facing the country. According to a brand new Gallup poll, 16% say that terrorism is their biggest concern. Now, that's up just 3% in early November, and the highest that number has been for Gallup in a decade. Now, in the wake of the deadly Paris and San Bernardino terrorist attacks, it's clear that America is on edge. There are investigations into ISIS now in all 50 states, and just yesterday we learned that authorities detained a Maryland man for allegedly trying to carry out an attack that was financed by the Islamic State. Here now with reaction, Fox News military analyst Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, author of The Warrior Diplomat, former Special Forces Commander Mike Waltz, and former NYPD Detective Bo Dietl. Good to see you all. All right, Bill Cowan, you know, we have a problem. We have a president of the United States. He's not willing to hit the oil wells. He's not willing, you know, we have a Department of Homeland Security chief that won't even look into the backgrounds of people's social media before he lets them into the country. We've got big problems here.
Big problem, Sean. And not only that, we have a president who continues to marginalize and dismiss the hard work of our law enforcement officials, continues to ignore what intelligence officials have told him. He really, by all accounts, pays very little attention to the real problems that most Americans are worried about, and as you just said, that's terrorism.
You know, I've got to say, you know, Officer Waltz, this is, to me, is inexplicable. We know that ISIS is the richest, best-financed terror group with the largest landmass of any terror group in history. The president has opportunities to cut off their financial resources by bombing the oil wells, and yet he refuses to do so. That's like a dereliction of duty. That's 101 basic warfare. This president, does the president not know this is a war?
No, he doesn't. Frankly, he doesn't realize that they are at war with us, but we are not fully engaged in a war with them. For example, we are just now deploying our most elite special operations forces in an expeditionary targeting force now a year after ISIS took the town of Mosul. If we had deployed them a year ago and started targeting their leadership night after night after night, they wouldn't have time or space to do things like plan the Paris attacks and also reach out to their operatives here in the United States. And also, Sean, let's not forget Edward Snowden here, who basically exposed our entire toolkit from our intelligence organization, and now we've shut down the metadata program that allows us to monitor these groups reaching into the United States.
You know, you raise a lot of good points, but I think probably besides not bombing the oil wells, the idea that our Homeland Security Secretary, Bo, literally said he was worried about civil liberties backlashes and bad public relations. So this woman in San Bernardino, they didn't look at her social media accounts, which showed that she had a desire to join ISIS and commit jihad.
You know, we do investigations. When we do background investigations, one of the tools that we use when you're hiring people is the social media. Once you put something on the social media, that is public domain. And damn it, if they would have looked on the social media of this woman, they would have saw she wanted jihad against America. Now we have the advent of these passports coming out of Syria, real passports, real Syrian passports. Then you get Donald Trump. Everyone thinks he's crazy. He's not crazy. What he's trying to say is we've got to stop immigration till we know who's coming in. And we had this terrible thing that happened today, Sean, over here in California. That threat, those kids are going home. 700,000 of those kids, Mommy, what happened? That was a terror threat, regardless of what happened.
And in New York.
Whatever happened, this now lives in those kids' lives that they really caused terror. And it's caused from ISIS. Now, you got to understand something. What happened is when they shut the schools down, we should have protocols in effect where a person who heads up a school district should not be the one that does it. You have to have the FBI to join terrorist task force. This should be done from a security standpoint.
Colonel Cowan, Tashfeen Malik literally had a number of posts on Facebook pledging her support for Islamic Jihad, saying she hoped to join the fight one day. This was in the LA Times. And you have a Homeland Security Secretary. His job is to keep us safe, and he didn't want to invade this woman's privacy. Now, to me, this guy ought to be fired. To me, the country ought to be outraged. I don't see the outrage, the level of urgency that we ought to have, because that's a huge intelligence failure. You know, if I hired Bo Dietl to do a background check on somebody I was going to hire, he'd look at their social media account. That's 101 to me. Why wouldn't they do that?
Failure of leadership, Sean, you just said it. That failure of leadership goes all the way to the top. Nobody's ever held accountable for failures of leadership in this administration, and until somebody puts the pressure on them, and that is the American public, they're going to continue to bumble along as they want to until we get a new president in there sooner rather than later.
And Michael, the president says that the weather, climate change, is a bigger national security threat than ISIS. And John Kerry said, oh, we know who's coming into the country for the most part. I'm like, for the most part? That's not exactly reassuring to me.
Well, the thing is our law enforcement organizations and our intelligence community have to be right, 100% of the time, and the terrorists only have to be right once. And again, we've taken the tools that they need away from them. They can't, this El Shinwari, this gentleman in Maryland, was apparently demonstrating a level of sophistication in how he communicated, how he was covering his tracks that the FBI has rarely seen before. The terrorists are now able to communicate with secure means, and we're not giving our intelligence community the ability and the authorities through Congress to penetrate the areas that they need to, both on the internet, through cell phones, through emails, and other things. And the thing is, Sean, most Americans don't care if we look into someone who's communicating with Yemen or Syria or what have you 5 times a week, and we get a court order to do so. We need to give those tools back immediately.
The president's still insisting that we bring in the Syrian refugees, even though the House Homeland Security Chairman Mike McCall has said that they know of a specific plan by ISIS to infiltrate that population. Now, in Norway, where Syrian refugees are resettling, hundreds of these asylum seekers there have cell phone images of, quote, this was in the Daily Mail, executions, of severed heads, of photos, videos of brutal punishments, images of people holding up severed heads. And so those are the people Norway has taken in.
I just get so angry with this president. I mean, we're at war. We're at war right now. Not all Muslims, but we're certainly with these Islamic terrorists are coming over here. We have the America now, when you get an attorney general, all of a sudden, political correctness. You can't say anything against a bad Muslim, or a good Muslim or anything. How about saying something bad against the possibility of someone causing an attack on this country and about Americans being killed, which is going to happen. And like what I said before, and we talked about it, Sean, the southern border have Syrians coming across with no passports, and all they have to do is say, I'm afraid to go back to my country. I got a problem with it. Look, my mother came from Italy. My father came from Germany. Your parents and your ancestry came from Ireland. We had to conform to the laws of what's there. Everyone should have to conform to it. And what Trump says, we should shut it down with everyone, not just Muslims, but everyone coming in.
Colonel Cowan, he's listening to the National Director of Intelligence, James Clapper, and the FBI Director, and the Special Envoy to defeat ISIS. All of these people have told us that we can't vet these people, but he's doing it anyway. It seems to me like if something happens, this president would have blood on his hands.
Well, he would, Sean, but I don't think he cares. I think at this point he's just trying to ride out the clock. Let me say quickly, if I can, going to this young guy in Maryland who Michael pointed out had done a very good job. We need draconian laws in this country, Sean, such that anybody who communicates knowingly on any level with ISIS, whether it's somebody they believe here in the United States to be a member of ISIS, overseas with ISIS, or Al-Qaeda, or somebody else, 20 years, minimum jail time, 20 years, low standards of evidence to prove it. 20 years, no question about it. And that'll shut down a lot of the stuff that's going on.
We have to, Colonel, again, we have to be just like Francis. We're at war right now. Oh, we only had 15 dead, 20 shot. But what if it was 150? Our president would still do the same damn thing. Look what happened over in France. They then all of a sudden forget about search and seizure. They went in there. They took the doors out. We've got to do that in America. If we have a terrorist out there, we have to find them before they kill Americans. And damn it, it's still coming to this country. I'm very passionate about this. I'm sorry. But this president is digging us into a hole.
We don't get this right, bro. Americans are going to die.
Absolutely.
That's why it's imperative. All right. Thank you all for being with us. Coming up.